My name is Cheryl, and I am 33 years old. When our CFO Gerald slammed his fist on the desk and yelled, "Clear your desk," I felt my heart racing. After 3 years as a senior financial analyst at our tech payment company, I had uncovered something in our books that nobody was supposed to see. The numbers told a story of deception that would change everything. If only Gerald knew what I had already done. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from, hit the like button, and subscribe to hear how I turned being fired into the most satisfying corporate takedown of my career. When I first joined FinTech Solutions 3 years ago, I was thrilled about the opportunity. We were a rapidly growing payment technology company that provided processing services for businesses of all sizes. Our platform handled everything from credit card transactions to digital wallets, and we were making waves in the industry with our innovative approach to security and user experience. The company culture initially felt like a breath of fresh air. Our CEO, Rebecca Thompson, was a visionary leader who had started the company 7 years earlier and built it from the ground up. She was smart, fair, and genuinely seemed to value her employees. During my interview, she talked about integrity being a core value at FinTech Solutions, which really resonated with me. I remember leaving that interview thinking, this is where I want to build my career. As a senior financial analyst, my job was to dive deep into the numbers, identify trends, assess risks, and provide insights that would help guide the company's financial decisions. I had a finance degree from Northwestern and had spent 5 years at a larger corporation before joining FinTech Solutions. I wanted a place where I could make more of an impact, and this mid-sized company, with about 200 employees, felt like the perfect fit. My daily work involved analyzing transaction data, preparing financial reports, and working closely with various departments to ensure we were making sound financial decisions. I took pride in my attention to detail and my ability to spot patterns that others might miss. Rebecca once called me our financial detective during a company meeting, and the nickname stuck with some of my colleagues. The executive team initially seemed solid. There was Rebecca as CEO, Gerald Davis as CFO, Diane from marketing, and Kurt heading up technology. Gerald had joined the company about a year before me, coming from a big-name financial institution. He had the credentials and the experience, and at first I found him to be knowledgeable and professional, if a bit distant. My direct colleagues were a great group of people. Amanda Wilson was our lead accountant, a detail-oriented professional with a dry sense of humor who had been with the company since almost the beginning. Jason Green worked in our legal department and was always willing to explain the complex contractual language to us finance folks. Then there was Patrick Chen from IT, who would patiently help whenever our systems gave us trouble. We often had lunch together in the break room, sharing stories and helping each other navigate workplace challenges. Everything changed about 6 months ago when a massive opportunity landed on our doorstep. Mega Retail, a national chain with over 300 locations, was considering switching their payment processing to our platform. This would be a multi-million-dollar contract, easily the biggest in our company's history. The potential revenue from this deal would not only boost our quarterly numbers but could potentially lead to an IPO within the next year or two. The entire office was buzzing with excitement. This was the kind of opportunity that could transform our company and our careers. Rebecca called an all-hands meeting to announce that we were in the final running against 2 larger competitors. Mega Retail has concerns about working with a company our size, she told us. But they love our technology and our approach. We need to show them we can handle their volume and provide the level of service they need. This is our chance to play in the big leagues. Following that meeting, Gerald called me into his office. He was sitting behind his large mahogany desk, looking through some papers when I entered. "Cheryl, I need you to lead the financial analysis for the Mega Retail deal," he said, not looking up immediately. When he finally did meet my eyes, his expression was serious. "This is high priority. We need to understand every financial implication of this contract, evaluate the processing volume projections, and make sure the pricing structure works in our favor. I need your best work on this." I felt a surge of pride at being chosen for such an important task. "I won't let you down," I assured him. "Good," he replied. "Work with Jason to understand the contract terms and coordinate with the technical team to assess capacity requirements. I want preliminary numbers by the end of next week." Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into the work. I analyzed Mega Retail's transaction patterns based on the sample data they had provided. I worked with our technical team to assess the infrastructure investments we would need to make. I created detailed financial projections showing how the deal would affect our revenue and profitability over the next 3 years. The numbers looked amazing. This deal would increase our annual revenue by nearly 40%, and while there would be initial costs to scale our infrastructure, the long-term profit margins were very healthy. I was confident in my analysis and excited to present my findings. During this busy period, the camaraderie with my colleagues grew even stronger. Amanda would bring me coffee when I was working late. Jason and I spent hours going through the legal terms to ensure I understood all the financial obligations. Patrick kept checking in to make sure our systems could handle the additional workload for my analysis. "You look like you haven't slept in days," Amanda commented one evening, as she placed a cup of coffee on my desk. "Is everything okay with the mega retail analysis?" "Just want to make sure everything is perfect," I replied with a tired smile. "This deal could change everything for us." "Well, we all appreciate how thorough you are," she said. "That is why Gerald put you on this. Your reputation for accuracy precedes you." Those words meant a lot to me. I had always believed that in finance, precision and integrity were everything. Little did I know that these very values would soon put me on a collision course with the company's CFO. The first hint that something wasn't right came about 3 weeks into my analysis of the mega retail deal. I was reviewing our current payment processing costs to establish a baseline for my projections when I noticed some inconsistencies in our expense reports. The fees we were paying to Global Pay, our main payment processor, seemed higher than the rates outlined in our contract with them. At first, I thought it might be a simple accounting error, or perhaps some additional services we had added that weren't in the original agreement. This was the kind of detail I was paid to catch, so I made a note to ask Gerald about it in our next meeting. That meeting took place in the glass-walled conference room we called the Fishbowl. Gerald had gathered the team working on the mega retail deal for a progress update. I presented my preliminary findings, which were overwhelmingly positive, and then brought up my question about the Global Pay fees. "I noticed our monthly payments to Global Pay are about 0.3% higher than the rate structure in our master service agreement," I said. "That adds up to nearly $70,000 in extra fees over the past year. I wanted to check if there were additional services or fees I should be factoring into the mega retail projections." Gerald's reaction was subtle but noticeable. A momentary tightening around his eyes, a slight stiffening in his posture. "Those are variable fees based on transaction types," he said, dismissively. "Don't worry about that for now. Focus on the core projections for mega retail." I nodded, but something about his response felt off. If there were variable fees based on transaction types, that was exactly the kind of detail I needed to know for accurate projections. After the meeting, I approached Gerald privately. "About those Global Pay fees," I began, "I'd really like to understand the variable structure better so I can build a more accurate model for the mega retail volume." Gerald checked his watch. "I have another meeting to get to. Just use the base rates for now, and we can refine later if needed. This isn't a priority right now, Cheryl." Over the next few days, I tried to find documentation that would explain the fee discrepancy. I searched our shared drive for the complete Global Pay contract, but could only find summary documents. When I asked Amanda if she had access to the full agreement, she seemed surprised by my question. "Gerald handles all the payment processor relationships personally," she told me. "He says it's to maintain confidentiality of our negotiated rates. Even I only see the payment amounts for bookkeeping." This was unusual. In my experience, contracts of this magnitude were typically accessible to the finance team for analysis and planning purposes. The lack of transparency was concerning, but I tried to give Gerald the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps he had negotiated some special terms that were sensitive. As the deadline for the mega retail proposal approached, the pressure intensified. We had a large team meeting to review all aspects of our bid. Representatives from every department were present, including Rebecca. I presented my financial analysis, which showed strong profitability projections. When I finished, Gerald jumped in immediately. "These projections seem overly optimistic," he said, his voice carrying an edge I hadn't heard before. "I think Cheryl has underestimated the processing costs we'll incur with this volume." I felt like I'd been slapped. My analysis was based on solid data and conservative assumptions. I used our current cost structure with Global Pay as a baseline. I responded, trying to keep my voice steady. "If you have additional cost factors I should consider, I'd be happy to incorporate them." "The point is," Gerald continued as if he hadn't heard me, We need to be more conservative in what we promise mega retail. I suggest we revise these numbers before the final proposal." Rebecca looked concerned. "Gerald, if you have specific concerns about the financial projections, perhaps you and Cheryl should review them together in detail. We need to be confident in our numbers before we present to mega retail." "Of course," Gerald replied smoothly. "I'll schedule some time with Cheryl tomorrow." As the meeting broke up, I felt a knot forming in my stomach. Something wasn't right. Gerald had essentially questioned my competence in front of the entire team without providing any specific issues with my analysis. The next day, Gerald's promised meeting never materialized. He sent an email saying he was too busy and that I should just adjust the projections to show a 5% higher processing cost. New explanation, new discussion. That evening, I found Amanda still at her desk when most people had gone home. I hesitated, then decided to confide in her. "Amanda, have you ever noticed anything unusual about our relationship with Global Pay?" I asked, keeping my voice low despite the empty office. She looked up from her computer, her expression cautious. "What do you mean by unusual?" I explained the discrepancies I had found and Gerald's resistance to discussing them. "Maybe I'm overthinking this, but something doesn't feel right." Amanda was quiet for a moment. "I've wondered about some things myself," she finally admitted. "The Global Pay contract is the only vendor agreement I don't have full access to, and Gerald insists on reviewing all payments to them personally before they go out. That's strange, right? For a CFO to be that hands-on with a single vendor." She nodded slowly. "Now that you mention it, yes. Especially since it's not even our biggest expense category." "Do you know where I might find the complete master service agreement with Global Pay?" I asked. Amanda hesitated. "There should be a copy in the legal department's contract database. Jason might be able to help you access it." The next day, I found Jason in the break room and casually brought up my need to review the Global Pay agreement for the mega retail proposal. He seemed surprised. "Gerald hasn't given you access to that. It's pretty standard to review our processor agreements when bidding on large retail clients," Jason said. "He's been evasive," I replied carefully. Jason looked around to make sure we were alone. "Look, I can get you access to the contract database. Just be careful with how you use the information, okay? Gerald can be territorial about certain things." That night I stayed late at the office. Once most people had left, I used the access Jason had provided to search for the Global Pay contract. It took some digging, but I finally found it along with all the amendments and appendices. I started reading through the master service agreement looking for anything that might explain the fee discrepancies. Most of it was standard legal language about services, liabilities, and terms. But then buried in section 17.3, I found a curious clause: "Services are guaranteed by the named officer on Appendix B." That seemed odd. What did guaranteed mean in this context? And why would an individual officer need to be named? I quickly flipped to Appendix B, and what I saw made my blood run cold. There, listed as the guaranteeing officer, was Gerald Davis, CFO. Why would our CFO personally guarantee a vendor contract? That wasn't standard practice by any means. Corporate contracts were guaranteed by the company itself, not by individual executives. I continued searching through the documents and found quarterly amendments that outlined a strategic partnership fee structure. According to these documents, Global Pay was paying a referral fee to a company called GD Financial Consulting for client referrals. The initials GD immediately caught my attention. Gerald Davis. Could he have set up a side company to collect referral fees from our payment processor? If so, that would be a massive conflict of interest, possibly even illegal. I needed to find out more about GD Financial Consulting. I made a copy of the relevant documents and decided to continue my investigation the next day. As I was leaving the office, a sense of unease settled over me. If my suspicions were correct, I had just stumbled onto something much bigger than a simple accounting discrepancy. The next morning I arrived at the office earlier than usual. The quiet of the nearly empty building gave me the privacy I needed to continue my investigation. I started by searching for information about GD Financial Consulting online. There wasn't much, just a basic business registration in Delaware with minimal details. The company had been formed 2 years ago, shortly after Gerald joined FinTech Solutions. The listed address was a post office box, and there was no website or substantial online presence. This lack of information only heightened my suspicions. A legitimate consulting firm would typically have more of a digital footprint. I needed more concrete evidence before I could draw any conclusions, though. I decided to take a risk and look more closely at our payment records with Global Pay. As a senior financial analyst, I had access to our accounting system, though I rarely needed to look at specific vendor payments. I searched for all transactions to Global Pay over the past year and exported the data to analyze. The payment history showed regular monthly fees that aligned with our processing volume, plus quarterly payments labeled as platform maintenance fees. These quarterly payments were substantial, around $50,000 each, and had begun appearing about 18 months ago. There was nothing inherently suspicious about maintenance fees, but the timing coincided with when the amendments mentioning GD Financial Consulting had been added to our contract. I needed to connect these dots more clearly. If Gerald had set up a shell company to receive kickbacks from Global Pay in exchange for keeping them as our payment processor, there would be a money trail. At around 7:30, I saw Patrick from IT arriving. He was always an early bird, and I knew he might be able to help me. Patrick and I had built a good rapport over the years, often troubleshooting financial system issues together. "Patrick, can I ask you something in confidence?" I said, stopping by his desk with 2 cups of coffee from the break room. He looked up from his computer, accepting the coffee with a grateful nod. "Sure, what's up?" I took a deep breath. "I'm working on a sensitive financial analysis, and I need to check some email communications related to a vendor contract. It's for the mega retail deal," I added, which wasn't entirely untrue. "Do we keep archives of executive communications?" Patrick looked uncomfortable. "We do, but I can't just grant access to executive emails without proper authorization. That would violate several company policies." "I understand," I said, trying to hide my disappointment. "I'm just trying to be thorough with my analysis, and I think there might be some important details in those communications." He seemed to consider this. "Look, I can't give you direct access, but if you have specific search parameters, I might be able to run a report from our email archiving system. It would only show emails matching those parameters, not full access to anyone's account." This was better than nothing. "Could you search for emails between Gerald Davis and anyone at Global Pay that mention GD Financial Consulting or referral fee?" Patrick raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. "I'll see what I can do. Give me until lunch." While waiting for Patrick, I decided to approach Jason again. I found him in his office reviewing some contracts. "Jason, I need your legal perspective on something," I said after closing his door. "What would it mean if an executive set up a company to receive referral fees from a vendor we work with?" Jason put down his pen and gave me his full attention. "That would be a serious conflict of interest, possibly fraud depending on the circumstances." "Why are you asking?" I hesitated, then decided to trust him. "I've found some concerning documents related to our Global Pay contract. There's a company called GD Financial Consulting receiving referral fees, and Gerald is listed as a personal guarantor on the contract." Jason's expression grew serious. "Show me what you found." I showed him the documents I had discovered. As he reviewed them, his frown deepened. "This doesn't look good, Cheryl. The personal guarantee is unusual enough, but if Gerald owns GD Financial Consulting and is receiving payments from Global Pay while also controlling our relationship with them, that's a textbook conflict of interest." "What should I do?" I asked. "You need more concrete evidence connecting Gerald to these payments. This is a serious accusation against a C-level executive." At lunchtime, Patrick called me over to his desk. He looked nervous. "I ran that search you asked for," he said quietly. "There were several results." He handed me a sealed envelope. "I've printed the relevant emails. Please be careful with this information, and I would appreciate if you didn't mention where you got it." "Thank you, Patrick. I understand the risk you're taking." I took the envelope to an empty meeting room and locked the door. Inside were about 20 pages of email communications. As I read through them, my worst suspicions were confirmed. The emails contained correspondence between Gerald and Michael Thompson, the CEO of Global Pay. They discussed a mutually beneficial arrangement where Global Pay would pay a 20% referral fee to GD Financial Consulting based on the processing volume from FinTech Solutions. In exchange, Gerald would ensure that FinTech Solutions remained a Global Pay client and would direct new business their way. One email explicitly stated, "As discussed, The quarterly payments to GD Financial will be processed as platform maintenance fees on the FinTech Solutions account to maintain discretion. I felt sick to my stomach. Gerald was essentially taking kickbacks from our payment processor and hiding them as legitimate business expenses. This was affecting our company's bottom line and potentially impacting the rates we charged our own customers. And with the mega retail deal on the horizon, the potential kickbacks would increase dramatically. The ethical implications were clear. By staying silent, I would be complicit in fraud. By speaking up, I would be risking my job and potentially making a powerful enemy. Gerald was well connected in the financial industry and could make it difficult for me to find another position if things went badly. I sat alone in that meeting room for nearly an hour, weighing my options and trying to control the anger and disappointment welling up inside me. I had respected Gerald, had worked diligently under his leadership. To discover this level of corruption was devastating. Finally, I made my decision. I couldn't ignore what I had found. The integrity of our company and my own professional ethics were at stake. I gathered all the evidence I had collected, made secure copies, and prepared to confront Gerald directly. Perhaps there was an explanation I hadn't considered. Perhaps he would realize the game was up and do the right thing. Looking back, I was naive to think it would be that simple. But I still believe in giving people a chance to explain themselves before escalating matters further. Little did I know that this confrontation would lead to the most stressful and ultimately triumphant period of my professional life. The next morning, I requested a private meeting with Gerald. His assistant Lisa seemed surprised by my insistence on seeing him as soon as possible, but managed to find a 30-minute slot that afternoon. The hours dragged by as I prepared what I would say and how I would present the evidence. At 3:30, I knocked on Gerald's office door, my heart pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. His office was spacious with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Awards and credentials hung on one wall, while another displayed abstract art pieces that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Gerald sat behind his large desk, looking annoyed at the interruption. "This better be important, Cheryl. I have the mega retail proposal review in an hour," he said, not bothering to look up from his computer. I closed the door behind me and took a seat across from him. "It's about the global pay contract," I said, keeping my voice steady. That got his attention. He looked up, his expression guarded. "What about it?" "I've been reviewing our payment processor relationships as part of the mega retail analysis." I began, trying to sound professional and calm. "I found some concerning irregularities in our agreement with Global Pay." Gerald leaned back in his chair, his face neutral, but his knuckles whitening as he gripped his armrests. "What irregularities?" I placed a folder on his desk. "For one, you're listed as a personal guarantor on the contract, which is unusual for a corporate agreement. And then there's the matter of GD Financial Consulting receiving referral fees from Global Pay fees that appear on our books as platform maintenance charges." A flash of alarm crossed his face before he controlled his expression. "You've been digging into confidential contracts without authorization." The financial analysis for mega retail required a thorough understanding of our processing costs, I countered. As the lead analyst on this project, I needed to verify the numbers. Gerald's tone hardened. "You've overstepped your boundaries, Cheryl. That contract was negotiated at an executive level and includes confidential terms." "Including terms that benefit you personally?" I asked, pushing the folder closer to him. "GD Financial Consulting, Gerald Davis. Financial Consulting. The company that receives 20% of Global Pay's fees from our account. That's a conflict of interest at best, fraud at worst." His face darkened with anger. "You have no idea what you're talking about. Those arrangements were approved and are perfectly legitimate. Then you won't mind if I discuss them with Rebecca and the board? Or perhaps with Mega Retail's due diligence team?" I suggested, my heart racing but my resolve firm. Gerald stood up, suddenly looming over the desk. "You're making accusations you can't back up, and you're threatening the biggest deal in this company's history. Do you realize what you're doing?" "I'm doing my job," I replied, standing up as well. "These financial irregularities need to be addressed before we move forward with Mega Retail or any other client." "Your job," Gerald laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Your job is to provide the analysis I ask for, not to play detective with executive-level agreements." "My job is to ensure financial accuracy and integrity," I insisted. These kickbacks are costing our company hundreds of thousands of dollars annually, money that affects our bottom line and our pricing to customers. Gerald's face contorted with rage. He slammed his fist on the desk. "Clear your desk," he shouted. "You're done here. I'm terminating your employment effective immediately for unauthorized access to confidential information and making false accusations against a senior executive." Despite expecting a negative reaction, the force of his anger shocked me. But I had come prepared for this possibility. "Before you do that," I said, keeping my voice level despite my racing heart, "you should know that I've secured copies of all the evidence, including the emails between you and Michael Thompson, discussing the arrangement with GD Financial. If I'm terminated under these circumstances, my next call will be to our board of directors." Gerald's face paled slightly, but his anger only seemed to intensify. "Get out of my office. Security will escort you to collect your personal items. Your system access is revoked as of now." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with an automated notification that my account permissions had been changed. Gerald must have messaged IT while we were talking. "This isn't over," I said quietly as I stood to leave. "It is for you," he responded coldly. "And if you value your future in this industry, you'll keep your misguided theories to yourself. No one will believe you over me, and I'll make sure you never work in finance in this city again." I left his office feeling numb. In the hallway, a security guard I had always greeted every morning was waiting, looking uncomfortable with his assignment to escort me. As we walked to my desk, colleagues glanced up with confused expressions. Amanda caught my eye, her face filled with concern. "What's happening?" she whispered as I started gathering my personal items. "I can't talk now," I murmured, aware of the security guard hovering nearby. "I'll call you later." As I packed my photos, notebooks, and the small plant Patrick had given me for my work anniversary, I felt a surreal sense of detachment. 3 years of hard work of building relationships and a reputation for excellence all ending like this. When I reached for my computer to retrieve personal files, the security guard stopped me. "I'm sorry, Miss Wright, but you're not permitted to access any company systems." "But I have personal photos and documents," I protested. "I have instructions to prevent all system access," he repeated apologetically. Fortunately, I had anticipated this possibility and had already backed up my important personal files the previous evening. Still, the humiliation of being watched as I packed my belongings as if I were a criminal was almost unbearable. As I was being escorted out, Patrick appeared in the hallway, his expression concerned. He fell into step beside us, ignoring the guard's uncomfortable look. "I just heard," he said quietly. "This isn't right. What can I do?" Before I could answer, we passed the break room where Jason was getting coffee. Seeing my cardboard box of belongings and the security escort, he immediately approached. "Cheryl, what happened?" he asked, his legal training evident in his composed but concerned demeanor. "Gerald terminated me for investigating the global pay contract," I said, softly, conscious of who might overhear. Jason's eyes narrowed. "That's retaliation. We should talk. Soon." The security guard cleared his throat. "I need to escort Miss Wright out of the building now." As I was led to the elevator, I noticed several other colleagues watching with surprised expressions. My cheeks burned with humiliation, but I held my head high. I knew I had done the right thing, even if it had cost me my job. Outside the building, I stood on the sidewalk for several minutes, clutching my box of belongings and trying to process what had just happened. My career at FinTech Solutions was over, but the larger issue remained. Gerald was defrauding the company, and with the mega retail deal approaching, the stakes were higher than ever. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. "Gerald called emergency meeting. Pushing board to approve mega retail contract tomorrow." "What's going on?" Gerald was moving quickly to secure the deal before anyone could ask questions about the processing costs or the global pay relationship. I needed to act fast if I was going to stop him. But first I needed a plan and some legal advice. This wasn't just about getting my job back anymore. It was about doing what was right. That evening was one of the longest of my life. After leaving FinTech Solutions with my box of personal items, I drove home in a daze, my mind racing with a mixture of anger, fear, and determination. My apartment felt unusually quiet and empty as I set my belongings down on the kitchen table and sank into a chair, trying to process everything that had happened. The reality of my situation hit me all at once. I had lost my job. Gerald had threatened my professional reputation. I had evidence of potential fraud, but wasn't sure how to use it effectively. And the mega retail deal was moving forward, potentially cementing Gerald's fraudulent arrangement for years to come. I allowed myself exactly 30 minutes to feel the full weight of these emotions. I cried, I paced, I even threw a pillow across the room in frustration. Then I took a deep breath, made a strong cup of coffee, and sat down at my laptop. It was time to fight back. My first call was to my friend Marcus Lloyd, an attorney who specialized in corporate law. We had met at a finance conference 2 years ago and had kept in touch. He agreed to meet me that evening at a quiet cafe a few blocks from my apartment. "This is serious," Cheryl Marcus said after I had explained the situation and shown him copies of the evidence I had gathered. The cafe was nearly empty, and we had chosen a corner table where we could speak privately. "What Gerald is doing is clearly a conflict of interest, possibly wire fraud, if he's using interstate banking to process these kickbacks." "What are my options?" I asked, wrapping my hands around my coffee mug to stop them from shaking. Marcus considered for a moment. "You have several paths here. You could go to the board of directors, file a whistleblower complaint with the SEC, or even contact law enforcement. But each has risks and complications. Such as, going to the board could be effective, but Gerald might have allies there. A whistleblower complaint offers some legal protections, but can take time to investigate. Law enforcement would want very clear evidence of criminal activity. What about Rebecca, the CEO? Should I approach her directly?" "That could work, but you'd need to be careful. If she's unaware of what Gerald is doing, she might be your best ally. But if she's somehow involved or unwilling to believe you over her CFO, you could be burning a potential bridge." We discussed the options for over an hour, weighing the pros and cons of each approach. As we talked, my phone buzzed with text messages from both Amanda and Jason, checking if I was okay and offering support. Patrick had also emailed saying he had secured some additional information that might help my case. "You seem to have allies within the company," Marcus noted. "I've built good relationships there over the years," I replied. "Unlike Gerald, I believe in treating colleagues with respect." As our conversation continued, an idea began to form in my mind. The quickest way to expose Gerald would be to go straight to someone with direct knowledge of the arrangement, who might have their own reasons to come clean. "What about contacting Michael Thompson directly?" I suggested. "He's the CEO of Global Pay, the other party in this arrangement." Marcus looked thoughtful. "It's risky. He could alert Gerald immediately. But if you could convince him that the scheme is about to be exposed anyway, he might decide cutting ties with Gerald is better than going down with him." "Global Pay is a legitimate company with a reputation to protect," I pointed out. "If they're facilitating these kickbacks, they're putting their entire business at risk. Plus, Thompson has more to lose than Gerald. Global Pay has thousands of clients. Losing one account manager like Gerald wouldn't hurt them as much as a public scandal." "It could work," Marcus agreed cautiously. "But you'd need to approach him very carefully. No accusations, just a presentation of facts and an opportunity to address the situation discreetly." When I got home, I spent hours crafting an email to Michael Thompson. I kept it professional and factual, stating that I had discovered concerning irregularities in the financial relationship between FinTech Solutions and Global Pay, specifically regarding payments to GD Financial Consulting. I mentioned that I had been terminated after raising these concerns internally, and that the matter would likely come to the attention of our board of directors and possibly regulatory authorities soon. I concluded by offering to discuss the matter privately before any escalation occurred. I attached redacted copies of some of the documents I had found, enough to show I had solid evidence, but not revealing everything I knew. After reviewing the email multiple times and getting Marcus's input via text, I finally hit send at nearly 2 in the morning. Then I tried to get some sleep, though my mind kept replaying the day's events in an endless loop. I awoke to the sound of my phone ringing at 6:30 the next morning. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. "Hello," I answered grudgingly. "Is this Cheryl Wright?" a deep male voice asked. "Yes, it is. This is Michael Thompson from Global Pay. I received your email. I think we should talk, and soon. How quickly can you meet me?" My heart raced. "I can meet you anywhere, anytime today." "Good. There's a coffee shop called Blue Brew on Maple Street. Can you be there in an hour? I'd prefer to discuss this in person rather than over the phone." "I'll be there," I promised. I rushed to get ready, my mind spinning with potential scenarios. This could be a trap with Gerald waiting to threaten me further, or it could be my chance to expose the truth. Either way, I was committed to seeing this through. The coffee shop was quiet when I arrived, with just a few early morning customers typing on laptops or reading newspapers. I spotted a distinguished-looking man in his 50s, sitting alone in the back corner checking his watch. Based on the photos I had seen online, this was Michael Thompson. As I approached, he looked up and gestured to the seat across from him. "Miss Wright, I presume?" "Yes. Thank you for meeting me, Mr. Thompson." He studied me carefully. "Your email was concerning, to say the least. You've made some serious implications about my company's relationship with FinTech Solutions." "I have evidence supporting everything I've suggested," I replied, calmly placing a folder on the table between us, "including emails between you and Gerald Davis discussing the arrangement with GD Financial Consulting." Thompson's expression remained neutral, but I noticed his jaw tighten slightly. "May I?" he asked, reaching for the folder. I nodded, and he spent several minutes reviewing the documents inside. Finally, he closed the folder and sighed deeply. "Miss Wright, I want to be very clear about something. Global Pay processes payments for thousands of businesses. Our standard contracts include provisions for referral partners who bring us new clients. There's nothing inherently improper about that arrangement." "I understand that," I replied. "But when your referral partner is also the CFO of the client company, who personally guaranteed the contract and concealed the relationship from his own company that crosses ethical and legal lines." Thompson was quiet for a moment. When Gerald approached us 2 years ago, he presented himself as having dual roles, both as FinTech's CFO and as an independent consultant. He assured us that FinTech's management was aware of and had approved the arrangement. "They didn't," I stated firmly, "and Gerald has been hiding the payments by categorizing them as platform maintenance fees on FinTech's books." Thompson looked genuinely disturbed by this information. That would explain why the contract structure seemed unusual. Our legal team flagged it, but Gerald provided what appeared to be authorization documentation. "Forged, I suspect," I said. "And now he's rushing to finalize a huge deal with Mega Retail that would significantly increase the volume, and therefore the kickbacks." Thompson leaned back in his chair, his expression now serious and concerned. "Miss Wright, I appreciate you bringing this to my attention. If what you're saying is true, Global Pay has been unwittingly participating in an unethical arrangement. That's not how we do business." "I believe you," I said, sensing his sincerity. "That's why I came to you directly instead of going straight to authorities or the press." "What are you hoping to achieve here?" he asked directly. I took a deep breath. "Justice primarily. Gerald should not be allowed to continue defrauding the company, but personally, I also want my job back and my professional reputation restored." Thompson nodded slowly. "There's a board meeting at FinTech tomorrow morning to approve the Mega Retail contract, isn't there?" "Yes," I confirmed, surprised he knew this. "As CEO of a major vendor, I could request to attend to discuss processing volume capabilities," he mused. "It would be unusual, but not unprecedented for a deal of this magnitude." I felt a glimmer of hope. "And once there, you could disclose the true nature of the arrangement with GD Financial." "I could," he agreed, "but I would need to consult with our legal team first. This situation has potential ramifications for Global Pay as well." "Time is short," I reminded him. "Once the Mega Retail deal is approved, it will be much harder to unwind this." Thompson checked his watch. "I have a call with our general counsel in 30 minutes. I'll discuss this with them immediately. Can you send me copies of all the evidence you have?" "Yes, but I'd like some assurance that Global Pay will cooperate in exposing this fraud, not in covering it up." "Miss Wright, I've built Global Pay's reputation on integrity. If we've been used as a vehicle for fraud, I want that stopped as much as you do." He handed me his business card with a direct number written on the back. "Call me at noon. I should have a decision by then." As I left the coffee shop, I felt a cautious optimism. Thompson seemed genuinely disturbed by the revelation, and he had a clear business interest in addressing the situation properly. Still, I had been naive before in confronting Gerald directly. I wouldn't make that mistake again. I called Marcus to update him, then reached out to Jason at FinTech to confirm the time of the board meeting. Jason also informed me that Gerald had called another team meeting that afternoon to finalize the Mega Retail proposal and that the atmosphere at the office was tense. At exactly noon, I called Thompson's number. He answered on the first ring. Miss Wright, I've consulted with our legal team. We're prepared to address this situation at tomorrow's board meeting. I'll be attending in person, and I would like you to be there as well. Can you make that happen? My heart leapt. I've been terminated. I don't have access to the building anymore. Leave that to me, Thompson said confidently. Just be at the fintech office at 8:30 tomorrow morning. Ask for me at reception. That afternoon and evening, I worked with Marcus to prepare for every possible scenario at the board meeting. We organized the evidence into a clear chronological presentation. Patrick secretly sent me additional email exchanges he had found in the system that further documented Gerald's scheme. Jason provided the exact time and location of the meeting and confirmed that all board members would be present. As I finally went to bed that night, exhaustion competed with anxiety and anticipation. Tomorrow would either vindicate me or destroy what remained of my professional credibility. But regardless of the personal outcome, the truth about Gerald's actions would finally come to light. I barely slept that night. By 6 in the morning, I was already up rehearsing what I would say and reviewing the evidence one last time. I chose my outfit carefully, a navy blue pantsuit that projected professionalism and confidence, even though I felt anything but confident inside. The drive to the FinTech Solutions office brought back a flood of emotions. It had only been 2 days since I had been escorted out of the building, but it felt like weeks. As I approached the familiar glass and steel structure, I could see people arriving for work, some of them my former colleagues. I wondered what they had been told about my sudden departure. At precisely 8:30, I walked into the lobby and approached the reception desk. The receptionist, Valerie, looked up in surprise. "Cheryl, I thought you." She trailed off, clearly uncomfortable. "I'm here to meet Michael Thompson from Global Pay," I said calmly. "He should be expecting me." Valerie checked her computer. "Yes, he arrived a few minutes ago and asked for you to be allowed up when you arrived." She handed me a visitor badge, which felt strange after having an employee badge for so long. As I waited for the elevator, I spotted Amanda entering the building. She did a double take when she saw me. "Cheryl, what are you doing here?" she exclaimed, hurrying over. "There are all kinds of rumors flying around about why you left." "I didn't leave voluntarily," I replied quietly, "but I'm here to set the record straight. I can't explain everything now, but you'll understand soon." The elevator arrived and we stepped in together. Amanda looked concerned, but intrigued. "The board meeting starts in 15 minutes. Gerald has been acting strange all morning, checking his phone constantly and snapping at everyone." "Has Rebecca arrived yet?" I asked. "Yes, she's been in her office since early. She seems surprised by your departure too." When we reached our floor, Amanda gave my arm a supportive squeeze before heading to her desk. I took a deep breath and walked toward the main conference room where board meetings were held. Through the glass walls, I could see people beginning to gather. My heart pounded in my chest, but I was determined to see this through. Outside the conference room, Michael Thompson was waiting, looking polished in an expensive suit. He nodded in greeting. "Miss Wright, are you ready for this?" "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied. "I've spoken briefly with Rebecca Thompson to request this unusual attendance. I told her it was related to payment processing capacity for the mega retail deal, which isn't entirely untrue. She seemed surprised, but agreed." "Thank you for doing this," I said sincerely. "Don't thank me yet," he replied. "This won't be pleasant for anyone involved." We entered the conference room together, causing heads to turn. The large oval table was surrounded by FinTech's board members and executive team. Rebecca sat at the head of the table with Gerald to her right. When Gerald saw me, his face went pale, then quickly flushed with anger. "What is she doing here?" he demanded, half rising from his seat. "She's been terminated." Rebecca looked confused. "Gerald, calm down. Mr. Thompson requested that Miss Wright join us for the discussion about payment processing capabilities. Given her work on the mega retail analysis, it seems reasonable." "It's absolutely not reasonable," Gerald sputtered. "She was terminated for cause, for accessing confidential information without authorization." Michael Thompson stepped forward. "Actually, that's part of what I need to discuss with the board today. It's not just about processing capabilities." The room fell silent. The tension was palpable as everyone sensed that something unexpected was about to happen. Rebecca gestured to 2 empty seats. "Please join us. Mr. Thompson, perhaps you could explain why you're here today." Michael nodded and took a seat, placing his briefcase on the table. I sat beside him, avoiding Gerald's furious glare. Thank you for accommodating this unusual request, Michael began. Global Pay has been FinTech Solutions' payment processor for the past 4 years, and we've valued this partnership. However, some information has recently come to my attention that requires immediate discussion with this board. He opened his briefcase and removed a copy of the master service agreement between our companies. Gerald shifted uncomfortably in his seat. As you know, payment processing for a company of your size, especially with the addition of a client like Mega Retail, involves significant technical infrastructure and financial guarantees. Michael continued. Our standard agreements include certain protections. He flipped to a marked page and began reading. Section 17.3 states, and I quote, "Services are guaranteed by the named officer on Appendix B." Michael looked up, his gaze landing directly on Gerald. The named officer in this case is Gerald Davis, your CFO. Rebecca frowned. I don't understand. Why would Gerald personally guarantee a corporate contract? That's not standard practice. It's not, Michael agreed. And when this unusual arrangement was established 2 years ago, our legal team raised questions. However, we were assured that FinTech's management was fully aware of all terms. Gerald intervened quickly. This is a technical legal matter that doesn't require board attention. Can we please focus on the Mega Retail deal, which is why we're all here? I'm afraid this is directly relevant to the Mega Retail deal, Michael countered, removing another document from his briefcase. This is a separate agreement between Global Pay and a company called GD Financial Consulting. The board members exchanged confused glances. Gerald's face had gone completely white. This agreement establishes a referral fee arrangement whereby GD Financial receives 20% of the processing fees generated by FinTech Solutions' account with us. A murmur ran through the room. Rebecca's expression hardened. GD Financial. Gerald Davis Financial, I presume. Gerald leapt to his feet. This is absurd. Thompson is trying to sabotage our relationship because he knows we've been considering other processors for the Mega Retail deal. Michael remained calm. I have copies of incorporation documents for GD Financial Consulting listing Gerald Davis as the sole owner. I also have evidence of quarterly payments from Global Pay to GD Financial, totaling over $300,000 in the past 18 months. One of the board members, an older woman named Elaine, spoke up. Are you saying our CFO has been taking kickbacks from our payment processor? That appears to be the case, Michael confirmed. These payments were labeled as referral fees on Global Pay's books, but on FinTech's records they appear as platform maintenance fees charged by Global Pay. Rebecca turned to Gerald, her expression a mixture of shock and fury. Is this true? Gerald's demeanor suddenly changed. His panic gave way to a calculated calmness. This is being blown completely out of proportion. Yes, I have a consulting business that sometimes works with financial service providers. Yes, Global Pay is one of my clients. But there's no conflict of interest here. No conflict of interest. I couldn't stay silent any longer. You personally guaranteed our contract with Global Pay, negotiated higher processing fees than industry standard, and then collected 20% of those fees through your shell company. That's the definition of conflict of interest. Gerald pointed at me accusingly. This is exactly why you were terminated. You're making wild accusations without understanding the complexity of these financial relationships. Michael Thompson cleared his throat. I should clarify Global Pay's position here. We entered this arrangement believing it had been disclosed to and approved by FinTech's management. If that's not the case, we have serious concerns about continuing under the current terms. Rebecca looked devastated. Gerald, you've been with us for 3 years. I trusted you with our company's financial well-being. Please tell me this isn't what it appears to be. Gerald's expression hardened. This is a witch hunt, plain and simple. Wright was always jealous of my position. Now she's convinced our processor to join her crusade. There's nothing illegal about having outside business interests. There is, when you don't disclose them, and when they directly conflict with your fiduciary duty to the company. Jason spoke up from his seat near the end of the table. I hadn't even noticed him in the room. I reviewed the documents Cheryl found, Jason continued. As legal counsel, I can confirm that Gerald never disclosed this relationship in his annual conflicts disclosure, which is a direct violation of company policy and potentially state corporate law. Gerald's face contorted with rage. You're all turning against me based on some paperwork that can be interpreted in multiple ways. I reached into my folder and pulled out my final piece of evidence. How about your own words, Gerald? These are emails between you and Michael Thompson, discussing how to structure the payments to GD Financial to, as you put it, maintain discretion. I handed copies to Rebecca and each board member. The room fell silent as they read through the damning exchanges. One email was particularly explicit. Michael, we need to adjust how these payments appear on fintech statements. The current labeling could raise questions. Can we use platform maintenance as the category going forward? That will be easier to justify if anyone asks. Gerald seemed to deflate before our eyes. He sank back into his chair, the fight gone from his posture. This is being taken out of context, he said weakly. Rebecca looked up from the emails, her expression now cold and resolved. Gerald, I think you should leave the room while the board discusses this matter. You can't be serious. I'm the CFO. We have the mega retail deal to finalize today. That deal will be postponed until we sort this out, Rebecca stated firmly. Please leave now, or I'll have security escort you out. The irony of her words wasn't lost on me. Just 2 days ago, Gerald had had me escorted out in the same way. As Gerald gathered his things and stormed out, the tension in the room shifted. Rebecca turned to me with a mixture of gratitude and regret in her eyes. Cheryl, I owe you an apology. It seems you were terminated for doing exactly what we would want any employee with integrity to do. I was just doing my job, I replied simply. The numbers didn't add up, and I followed them to their source. For the next hour, I presented the full timeline of my investigation to the board, with supporting input from Michael Thompson, Jason, and even Patrick, who was called in to verify the email evidence. Amanda also confirmed the accounting irregularities she had noticed, but hadn't been able to fully investigate due to Gerald's tight control over the global pay relationship. By the end of the presentation, the board had seen enough. They voted unanimously to terminate Gerald's employment immediately and to conduct a full forensic audit of all financial relationships he had managed. Rebecca officially rescinded my termination and thanked me publicly for my integrity and courage. As the meeting concluded and people began to file out, several board members stopped to shake my hand. Michael Thompson approached with a genuine smile. That took courage, he said. Not many people would risk their career to do the right thing. Thank you for believing me, I replied, and for being willing to acknowledge Global Pay's unwitting role in this. We'll be reviewing all our consulting relationships after this, he assured me, and I hope we can establish a more transparent and ethical relationship with fintech moving forward. As I walked back to my desk, which had remained untouched since my departure, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Vindication, yes, but also sadness that it had come to this, and relief that the truth had finally come to light. Amanda, Jason, and Patrick gathered around, eager to hear the full story now that the immediate crisis had passed. As I filled them in on the details, I realized how fortunate I was to have colleagues who valued integrity as much as I did. The day had been exhausting, but as I looked around at the office that had almost been taken from me, I felt a sense of pride that I had stood up for what was right, regardless of the personal cost. In the end, the truth had prevailed, and that made every difficult moment worth it. The weeks following Gerald's dramatic exit were a whirlwind of activity. A forensic accounting team was brought in to comb through every financial transaction and contract Gerald had touched during his tenure. Their findings revealed that the Global Pay kickback scheme was just the tip of the iceberg. Gerald had been skimming from other vendor relationships as well, though on a smaller scale. The total financial impact to fintech solutions amounted to nearly $700,000 over 3 years. The mega retail deal was temporarily put on hold, but not lost. Rebecca personally reached out to their executive team, explained the situation with complete transparency, and assured them that new financial controls were being implemented. Impressed by the company's integrity in handling the crisis, Mega Retail agreed to move forward once the new systems were in place, albeit with a slightly delayed timeline. My first day back at work had been slightly awkward, but overwhelmingly positive. Rebecca had sent a company-wide email explaining that I had uncovered significant financial improprieties and had been wrongfully terminated as a result. She publicly apologized and commended my integrity. When I walked in that morning, several colleagues applauded, which made me blush furiously, but also helped heal some of the humiliation I had felt when being escorted out. The board appointed an interim CFO, an experienced financial executive named Diana Miller, while they conducted a search for a permanent replacement. Diana was everything. Gerald wasn't transparent, collaborative, and genuinely committed to ethical business practices. She immediately invited me to help design new financial oversight protocols to prevent similar situations in the future. "What you did took tremendous courage," Diana told me during one of our meetings. "Many people would have looked the other way, especially when their job was threatened." "I couldn't live with myself if I had," I admitted, but I won't pretend it wasn't terrifying at the time. 3 months after the confrontation, the dust had mostly settled. Global Pay remained our payment processor, but under completely renegotiated terms that saved fintech significant money. Michael Thompson and I maintained a professional relationship, occasionally consulting on ways to improve financial transparency between our companies. The mega retail integration was finally underway, bringing a surge of new business that kept everyone busy. I had been promoted to Director of Financial Compliance, a newly created position that reported directly to the CEO and the board. The role gave me oversight of all financial relationships and contracts with a mandate to ensure transparency and ethical practices. My relationship with my colleagues had evolved as well. Amanda, Jason, and Patrick were no longer just workplace friends, but had become part of my personal support system. We often met for dinner or drinks after work, our bond strengthened by the crisis we had weathered together. "I still can't believe you had the guts to stand up to Gerald like that," Amanda said during one of our gatherings. "He was so intimidating." "I was scared out of my mind," I confessed. "But sometimes fear is just a sign that what you're doing matters." Jason raised his glass in a toast. "To Cheryl, who taught us all that integrity isn't just a word on the company values poster." I laughed, but the sentiment touched me deeply. Through this experience, I had discovered a strength in myself that I hadn't known existed. The easy path would have been to ignore the discrepancies, to accept Gerald's explanations, to protect my job by staying silent. But that path would have cost me something far more valuable than a paycheck: my self-respect. As for Gerald, legal proceedings were ongoing. The board had referred the matter to the district attorney's office, and Gerald was facing charges of wire fraud and embezzlement. His professional reputation was in tatters, with the story having made rounds in industry publications. Sometimes I felt a twinge of sympathy for him, imagining the desperation or greed that had led him down that path. But then I would remember the cold calculation of his actions and the ease with which he had tried to destroy my career to protect his scheme. The personal healing process had been gradual. For weeks after the confrontation, I experienced anxiety and occasional nightmares about the ordeal. The stress had taken a physical toll as well, manifesting in headaches and insomnia. But with time support from friends and family, and the vindication of having done the right thing, I began to recover. Rebecca had been particularly supportive during this period. What could have created a rift between us had instead fostered mutual respect. She had apologized multiple times for not seeing through Gerald's deception and for allowing my termination without proper investigation. "I failed as a leader," she told me during a one-on-one meeting. "I should have questioned Gerald's account instead of accepting it at face value." "He was very convincing," I replied, "and he had built up years of trust with you." Still, I should have remembered that trust must be paired with verification, especially in financial matters. "You taught me a valuable lesson, one I won't forget." The company culture had changed noticeably as well. Where once financial discussions had been largely confined to the executive suite, Rebecca now encouraged greater transparency. Quarterly financial reviews were shared with all employees, and a new whistleblower protection policy was implemented, providing clear channels for reporting concerns without fear of retaliation. On a personal level, I had learned invaluable lessons about myself and the business world. I discovered that my technical skills as a financial analyst were important, but my ethical compass was irreplaceable. I learned that having allies who share your values is crucial when facing ethical challenges. And most importantly, I realized that standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult, ultimately leads to the most sustainable form of success. One evening, about 6 months after the confrontation, I was working late finalizing the financial compliance protocols for our annual audit. Rebecca stopped by my office on her way out. "Still here?" she asked, leaning against the doorframe. "Just wrapping up the compliance documentation," I replied. "The auditors will be here next week." She nodded approvingly. You know, when I started this company, I had a vision of building something that would not only be successful, but would operate with integrity at every level. Gerald's actions were a significant setback to that vision, but your response to those actions ultimately strengthened it. Her words warmed me. I just did what needed to be done. That's exactly it, Cheryl. Most people know what should be done, but far fewer actually do it when there's a personal cost involved. She paused, then added, The board has approved the new executive compensation package, by the way. Your promotion to the executive team will be announced next week. I was stunned. Executive team. But I've only been in this role for 6 months. And you've proven in that time that you're exactly what this company needs. We're creating a new position, Chief Ethics and Compliance Officer, reporting directly to me and the board. I want you to take it. As Rebecca left, I sat in my office marveling at how much had changed in half a year. From being escorted out of the building in disgrace to joining the executive team, all because I had refused to look the other way when something wasn't right. The experience had transformed not just my career, but my understanding of success. True success isn't measured merely by titles or salaries, but by the integrity with which we navigate our professional journey. It's about creating value while staying true to our values, about building wealth without sacrificing our moral wealth. That night, as I finally packed up to go home, I remembered Gerald's words when he fired me. Clear your desk. What had been meant as an act of intimidation had instead cleared the way for a more authentic and meaningful career path than I could have imagined. Sometimes the most difficult moments in our professional lives are not obstacles but opportunities, chances to define who we are and what we stand for. By staying true to my principles, I hadn't just exposed a financial fraud. I had discovered the kind of leader I wanted to be. Have you ever faced an ethical dilemma at work? What did you do, and how did it change you? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life experiences and lessons learned. Thank you for listening, and remember, your integrity is your most valuable asset, one that no one can take from you unless you let them. Take care, and I will see you in the next story.